What up, nerds? Welcome back to The Nerdy Narrative. My name is Leslie Smith, and today on the channel, I'm going to be doing a non-spoiler discussion about my experience reading The Redemption of Morgan Bright by Chris Panatier. Now, this review is going to be one that appeals to those readers that love psychological thriller horror stories. I know a lot of you read one that I read last year and loved. It is The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. I talked to a lot of you when I read this one last January, and we all talked about how creepy it was, how good it was, how twisty it was. The Redemption of Morgan Bright turns that up to 11. And I could probably just say, if you like reading psychological thriller horror stories that take place in mental hospitals or asylums, then you should definitely pick this book up. Honestly, that's probably all it will take for a lot of you that enjoy those type of books. But for those of you who need a little more information and you haven't heard of this one yet, I would strongly advise to not read the full book description. The book description gives away a little piece of the puzzle that I think would be more interesting to learn about organically in the story. I just think it's a bit of a spoiler, but I understand why it's there because that is another type of story that a lot of people, they would read that and immediately go, I've got to read this. Back in 2022, I read a little science fiction book that he wrote called Stringers. If you've been a viewer of this channel for any length of time, you've heard me mention this book. It's made an appearance in so many videos because it's made me laugh. It would take me out of a reading slump. It has a very unique spin on the found family trope, loyal friendship. There's just so much to love about this book. And because I had such an amazing time with it, it landed Chris Panatier on the read every book by this author forever and ever amen list. So that is how it came to be that The Redemption of Morgan Bright landed on my TBR. Now, I did read the book description, and since I think it contains a spoiler for you, I will give you a condensed version that will give a little bit more of an indication of its plot. That won't lead to anything that will spoil some fun for you to discover organically while you're reading. A woman named Hadley Keene died on the road leading away from Hollyhock Asylum. Authorities are able to determine the cause of death, but the reason for it is unknown. A year passes by. The case is still unsolved, so Hadley's sister Morgan creates a false identity for herself, one of a troubled housewife named Charlotte Turner, and she enters herself for treatment into the asylum. My condensed version of the book description covers the psychological thriller aspect of the story. Some of the horror didn't just take place in the book. It took place in how I viewed my own reaction while reading this book, because for those of you who read psychological thrillers often, you know how the really big twist typically occurs near the end or is the actual ending. That's not the case with The Redemption of Morgan Bright. It starts out with a twist and the book is just one continuous spiral. It does not stop twisting. But the part that got under my skin the most is when this book was at the pinnacle of the mountain of crazy, it made sense. All of this stuff that was happening and you're going, this person is off their rocker. But it made sense. It was logical and I'm going, why do I think this is logical? Why is this making sense to me right now? Should I be concerned here? So it gets under your skin and it makes you question yourself, and oh my gosh, I don't know if that was the author's intent to really put you in the story that way, but that is what happened to me. And I have a really overactive imagination, so it doesn't take much. It's my personal opinion as a character-driven reader, the way that Chris Panatier crafted the character of Morgan Bright, it was perfection. This is a character, the development and changes. I don't even know, like, how could I call that development? The creation of, the evolving, the devolving. This character really went through some things in this book, and it was just, I mean, it was mind-bending to read about. There's no way that my brain was able to absorb everything that was happening. I will absolutely be rereading this book because with books like these, when you know the end, I like to go back and reread to see if there's any indicators that I may have missed that would have pointed to where it was going to go, though it went so many places. It was amazing. It's just a great way to exercise your mind. In addition to the fascinating character that is Morgan Bright, this story has a very distinct gothic feel to it, which to me is a horror story that has a much slower pacing. It focuses on the suspense, the intrigue, and sometimes even dread. The danger or pitfall in writing a gothic tale is sometimes that slower pace can leave your readers feeling a little bored. Chris Panatier avoids this pitfall by artfully switching between the past and present to unfold all of the events that take place in Hollyhock Asylum while Morgan Bright is there. The narrative style in which the past and present was laid out in the book for readers was also very clever in my opinion. The chapters that are narrated by Morgan are interspersed with police interviews, text conversations, research articles, all written in different styles that I found very interesting, very pleasing to switch between, and really enjoyed, and it kept me entertained, kept me turning those pages, and as a result, I read this book in 2 days. Asylums, mental hospitals are my favorite settings when it comes to psychological thrillers, and Hollyhock House is no exception here. To me, and this is from a reader's perspective, not from a writer, I don't know how it would be for a writer, but I would imagine that an asylum would be easy mode when it comes to creating atmosphere or the perfect setting for this type of novel. Remember how I mentioned I have an overactive imagination? Well, an asylum to me would be very scary. I can imagine a creepy one on my own. I've watched tons of movies, I've read tons of books, and it's just all fed into my imagination for a haunted asylum, an abandoned asylum. I've already built that in my own mind, what kind of feeling that would be. So whenever I pick that book up, that is already done for the author. I am providing that atmosphere myself, so it would be very easy to keep me entertained with this type of book if you've got a great plot. The plot for The Redemption of Morgan Bright is confusing. It changes constantly, and it's freaking brilliant. It's one of those books that you don't notice it so much as you're reading through. You're just so wrapped up in what's going on and trying to figure out what this is all going to culminate to, that it's after you finish the book and you close it and you're just letting everything wash over you. For me, I was just sitting there and I just came to this realization that The Redemption of Morgan Bright, for me, was about an intricate exploration of the human condition. Guilt, love, family, addiction, morality, conflict, autonomy of oneself. It's a masterpiece. It is an absolute masterpiece. And for those of you who do not typically read afterwords, forewords, introductions, there is an afterword by the author that you should definitely read for this one. The reason why I'm encouraging you to do that is while I did pick up on some of the literary themes that the author incorporated in the book, the reasons why and what they meant to him that I took comfort in and appreciated, and I'm grateful for him doing that. It really meant a lot to me, and I hope that it would be to you as well. That is gonna do it for me today, talking about The Redemption of Morgan Bright by Chris Panatier. I did immersion read with the audiobook that I purchased myself from Audible with my own money. I didn't enjoy the narrator for this one. Her name is Erin Ruth Walker, and she has a very pleasant voice. I love her voice. I love her tone. It just didn't match to a horror story, a thriller story, if that makes sense. She's one I would love to hear narrate some of my romance books that I like to listen to, but for a thriller horror story, not for me. But that's just my personal opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Read it in whatever format you want. Just read it. And if you do enjoy this one and you love Chris Panatier's writing style, which I'm sure you will, I would also recommend Stringers. This one is science fiction. It's hilarious and you will have a fantastic time. And with that, I am going to leave you all with it. In the description box below, you will find a link to where you can pick up a copy of this book. I will also have a link to where you can learn more about the author himself, as well as where you can find my written non-spoiler review if you would like to read that, and the full book description will be there as well. It's there if you want to read it, but I really recommend that you don't. I hope you enjoyed listening to a review of a book that I loved. I think you might would like it too if you give it a shot. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.